Okay, in 1996, I was doing volunteering with the boys basketball team at Springboro High School. And I was doing the weightlifting training for that team. And the head coach, Troy Holtree at the time, walked up with this brochure from a company called the Power Ed Company out of Salina, Kansas. And he walked up with this brochure and he said, "How would you like to buy me a score table?" And I had done a little bit of stuff for the Springboro basketball team previous to this, so it was not out of the question that he would say something like that. And he handed me the brochure, and I could see that there were these lighted tables that were padded, and on the front of it, it would say, for example, the Springboro Panthers. And I looked at this, and as I looked at it, I started to look at through the brochure. And when I looked through the brochure, there were some college tables that had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 of them put together, down like almost the whole sidelines. And then the very back page had a page of what was then called the tri-action table. Now the tri-action table was an 8-foot table, again all padded and lit and all, but it had these triangle panels to it. So when you looked at it, all 5 triangles would make a face. And then every 30 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever you set the timer on, all the triangles would switch and you would see a new face. So you could put 3 ads on a table. And I remember looking at this and kind of putting it together, and kind of consistent with my personality, I thought, gosh, we can either do an 8 or 10 foot lit table that would say Springboro Panthers, or we can do it big. And I thought, in my mind, I thought, well, that's where we're going to go. So I looked at the coach and I said, what if I were to do 3 tables? And I were to do a flippy thing over here, a flippy thing over here, and then a Springboro Panthers in the middle. And his comment was, oh, you can't afford that. There's no way. And I said, well, I'm not going to buy it. He said, well, how? And he kind of shrugged his shoulders. What are we going to do? And I said, I am going to sell 3 advertisers over here and 3 more businesses over here that would like to advertise. And that's how we're going to pay for the whole mess. And he said, okay. And I remember getting ready to walk out. And I said, now I can take this brochure for a day, right? And he said, yeah. And the next question I asked was, I can put advertising in the gym on these things, right? He said, oh yeah. So I grabbed the brochure and I called 3 business owners that I knew pretty well in Springboro. And I said, hey, I want to run over, I want to show you something. And I knew them well enough, or they felt like we did, that they let me come on out. So I came out. The first one I remember was Domino's Pizza. I went out to Domino's, showed them the whole thing. Then I went out to a Jebco, company called Jebco, and then I went to L&L Plumbing. 2 of the 3 said, I'm in. Now, I didn't know the cost. I didn't know how many years. I didn't know anything. But I just kind of put something together in my head. I said, I don't know. We're probably talking $3,000 or $4,000. You could be on there for probably 3 years, and you'll get one of those spots. 2 of them signed up. I remember calling the coach that night and saying, okay, it's a go. And he said, what? And I said, well, we talked about the tables, whatever. He said, you mean you're going to do the 3 tables? I said, yeah. And he said, well, my gosh, you need to call my banker then. Maybe he'll do it. So I called Lebanon Citizens National Bank. And then you ought to call my realtor. So I called the realtor, Sam Chris Realtor. So it took about 5 days, and I called the different people, and we were done. I got 6 people. Back then it was $3,500 is what I came up with for 3 years. Well, then I did all that. I didn't have contracts. We just shook hands and said, I know what you want. You know what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. So then I called the Power Ed Company on the back of the brochure, and I said, hey, here's what I want to do. I assume I can do this. Yeah. And I said, well, do you have a table like this in the area that I can see? I mean, I don't even really know what we just did. And he said, well, yeah, we've got a table down at Lakota High School. Well, they've got 2 of our tables. I said, oh, good. And I said, now, is it this flippy thing? And he said, well, it's tri-action. But no, high schools don't have tri-actions. And we have some universities, but there's no high schools that have tri-actions. I said, well, we're going to. And he said, you're going to put this in a high school? I said, oh, yeah, it's going to be in a high school. He says, well, it must be quite a high school. I said, well, I mean, I think at the time they had 160 kids in their senior class. So it's not a big school, but... And he said, well, okay. I mean, if you think you can do that. And I said, well, I've already done it. And he said, okay. So I got the name of Stu Eversole down at Lakota High School, and I ran down there, and I wanted to look at their tables, and they only had the static tables, just the one that was backlit and said like Lakota Firebirds on it or whatever they were at the time. So I went down there, and I remember pulling them out and looking at it, and I mean, it was just a beautiful, it was a phenomenal table. It was sturdy, metal. It was a nice table. So I came back and put it together and started collecting the money. We ordered it, and then I remember there was that anticipation of waiting to get it in and all. And I get this call in the afternoon. I had an insurance agency at the time, and it's interesting because I was sitting there in the afternoon and I got a call, and he said, "Bob, the 3 crates with the score tables just showed up. What are we going to do now?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to run home. I'll get a hammer, a crowbar, get some tools. I'll meet you at the gym." So we met up there. We got these monstrous crates in there. These things are very heavy, and we uncrating them, pulling them together, and I'm telling you, I'll never forget pushing those things together, plugging them in for the first time, and those 3 things lit up in the sideline. And this would probably have been about 3 in the afternoon, maybe 4. We started to call in people to come look at this. We had teachers, we had coaches, we had parents, the business owners. I called every one of them. We sat there, and I don't think I left till like 8 or 9 that night, for no other reason than to just sit and smile at that table. I mean, I just could not believe this thing. It was just, I remember unplugging it and plugging it in again, and just silly things. Just sat there and looked at the table. I think we ate dinner up there in the gym. I mean, I just couldn't leave these tables. They were absolutely beautiful. Well, that was really good. And then it was about a week or so later, and the coach says to me, "Hey, the coach at Miamisburg wants to talk to you," because I told him what we did. So I went to Miamisburg and talked to a guy, Craig Morris, the basketball coach at Miamisburg. And he said, "Well, yeah, I want to do it. I want you to meet with my AD." So I met with a guy, Jim Smurs, and started talking about it. And he said, "Well, all right, we need to talk to some other people at the school if we're going to do something like this." And it was funny because by the time I could get back to my office, my insurance office at Lebanon, I had a message that said, "Okay, I got the meeting set up for tomorrow." And I thought, oh my God. Now, being in the insurance business, nothing happens that quick. You don't talk to people about auto insurance or life insurance or anything and then, "Okay, I'm ready to talk to you." Well, that happened with this. So then I thought, well, golly, I need to call Kings then, because Springboro played Kings, and I'll see if they want to do something like this. So I called a guy, Greg Darbyshire, the AD, and he said, "Well, yeah, come on down." And I remember going to talk to him, and I think I actually talked to him maybe the same day as Miamisburg, the second appointment. And everybody was like, "Yep, we want to do it. We want you to do this. Let's do it." So started selling the ads on that. Not nearly as easy as Springboro, but we completed those tables. Everything was going good, etc. Need to backtrack a little bit, because when I was in the insurance business, I had a good friend that I had met at the gym. His name was Joe. And Joe wanted to become an insurance agent. He wanted to leave his position as an IRS auditor for the government, a defense auditor. And he said, I'd really like to get into the insurance agency thing, and how would we do that? And I said, well, and I came up with this elaborate plan that what he would do is he would buy into the insurance agency by buying this full-page ad in a yellow page book, in the telephone book, along with hiring an administrative assistant. And any business that came in out of that, he would start to earn towards buying the insurance. And then what that would do is it would even free me up to go out and talk to businesses. And we would write commercial business, and 50% of that would go towards his buy-in. So I had this plan that was supposed to work perfect. The only problem was, it was freeing up my time. Perfect, just like the plan. However, I wasn't going out to talk to people about insurance. I was talking to them about being on the table, about being on a score table at Kings or Miamisburg. So one day Joe came in and we met, and I said, "Joe, I got good news and I got bad news." I said, the bad news is all this time that you're freeing up, I haven't sold a single commercial policy of insurance. And he was a touch disappointed. And I said, the good news is I have now, I think, started a business and it is the table business. That's all I called it for years, was the table business. So I said, it's the table business, and here's how this works. So I made him 50% owner of this business. And I remember it wasn't but a week or two later that I get a call from Alter High School. And Alter High School says, we just played a girls basketball tournament down at King's High School, and they had this amazing looking table. We want one of those. And they said that you were the one that did it. How do we do this? Well, I described it briefly, and they said, okay, we're in, come on up, let's do this. Bring your contract with you. I said, oh boy, contract. I didn't even know what that word was. And then it was within minutes later, I got a phone call from Hamilton-Baden High School. We just played a girls basketball tournament. We played at King's. They said that you were responsible for their score table. We want one of those score tables. I realized then that that was the second point that I realized I'm in business. I got something going here. The first point was when we were in that Springboro gym, and I remember just having this feeling of being around a bunch of happy people. I mean, the school, the coaches, the kids, the business owners, me. Everybody was happy about this thing. And in all the years that I've been in insurance, which was since 1980, from 80 to 96, I mean, that was insurance, that's all I did. So for all those years, I never made anybody happy. Because in insurance, you don't make people happy. They're content, they're covered, they're satisfied, they're maybe even pleased, but not happy. Nobody buys life insurance and comes out happy. But these people were happy. And I thought, gosh, that feels good. And then the second one was these phone calls. It was funny how, I mean, people just wanted this. I mean, it was just bam, bam. And I remember even Baden said, I said, well, this is odd. I just got off the phone with Alter. And he said, oh my gosh. So my call came in second after Alter? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, when are you visiting Alter? And I said, well, like tomorrow, whatever. He goes, can you be here in the morning? I want ours to be before Alter. And I said, well, sure. So, I mean, I actually signed up 2 schools in one day. And I just remember thinking, this is crazy. And so we signed up Alter, signed up Baden. Things were cooking. Everything's cooking along. I mean, it just was one table after another, just doing the same silly little thing. I'd call up the next school and say, hey, I just did this, and I can do you now. And that's just the way it went. Finally, my Joe buddy said, do you know Eric? And I said, yeah, I think I do. He's the guy that works out at the gym, and you work out with him every now and then, and you guys hit the nightlife together every now and then. And he said, yeah, that's Eric. And he said, I was telling Eric what we did, and he wants involved. Okay. So I met with Eric, and Eric wanted to be involved. So I said, well, okay, I'm getting ready to expand to the Columbus area, and you can sell Columbus. So he tried to do a few tables, whatever, and he was not really having a lot of success in the sales part of it, but he loved the idea of the business. He had been an engineer, trained as an engineer, schooled for an engineer. I'm trying to think of the university. I can't even think of the university, but up 75 north something. But anyway, but so his setting really wasn't to do like sales and marketing, but he just thought that it was a great business. Well, then his company is going to leave and lay him off, and they're going to Washington without him. So he's going to be out of a job. So he looked at me and he said, gosh, I really want to be involved here, but I need to make more money, whatever. So I did what I think might have been one of the dumbest things I've ever done in my life. And I should say it right here. One of the dumbest things I've ever done in my life is that I said, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Eric be 1/3 partner. Won't that be neat? So now I'm going to have Joe, Bob, and Eric. So I've got an IRS auditor, I've got an engineer-looking dude, and then there's me. So the 3 of us are going at it. And Joe is supposed to be doing the paperwork and the books on the company. And Eric is supposed to be doing the selling, which he's not having a lot of great success, so he starts doing the books. So I got 2 people doing the books, and I'm doing everything else, which is fine. I mean, I was fine with that. I didn't want to do the books. I didn't want to touch the numbers. I didn't want to do the books. I didn't care if it took 5 people to do the books. which was kind of funny. I mean, you're doing one table every 2 months. You don't need a lot of people to do the books, but that's the way these people were books people. So that's what they did. And then one day, Eric walks up to me when we're having some success. Eric walks up to me and he said, and what we decided to do is, it was a simple accounting. We would divide the profits by 4. And we would take the 3 of us would split it, and the 4th one we would just bank. Just put in the bank in case we need the money someday, because we had big visions. One of the first things we did when we got together was we made a decision that the name needed to be changed. The first name that I came up with, which was the evening of when Alter and Baden called, I said, I got to come up with a business name. I can't call this Westerfield Insurance. I can't call it Bob Does Your Tables. I got to come up with something. So I came up with a name called the Supreme Court Image Company. So that was the first name that we had, was the Supreme Court Image Company. That was it. Well, Eric mostly said, well, we can't use that name. It's too long. We got to come up with a new name. And there is a whole story that could go on for many minutes on how we came up with the second name. But it was our job to have a meeting next Tuesday, and then one of the things that we were going to cover was the name of the company. So we come to the meeting with a name, and okay, that's our name, and Joe is going to file the papers with the state, and that's the way it's going to be. And I call Joe early in the morning, and I say, no, that's not the name. And he said, well, that's the name we came up with last night. Yeah, I know, but that's not it. I don't want it. Oh, okay. Well, this happened, and I kid you not, we would have a meeting like every Tuesday night, just set it that all of us could be there so we could settle big issues. You know, because we had 3 employees, you know, and we had probably done 5 tables, maybe 7. So, you know, we're a big company. Got to meet every Tuesday. So it happened about 5 Wednesday mornings where I would call Joe and I'd say, no, we're not using that name. And they became very, very frustrated with me on Tuesday nights when it was time to hone in on the name. And I would say yes, and they would look at me and go, are you sure? And I'd say, yeah, just do it. Well, then Wednesday morning I'd call and say, no, we're not doing it. Well, one day I'm driving in the car, and I hear a radio program, and all you guys are way too young for this, but it was a radio program called the Dean Odell Show, Dr. Dean Odell Show. And he would answer medical questions. And I'm driving along, and he makes a comment, and he says, you know, there's positive side effects to that. And I remember hearing that, and I go, that's it. I called Joe, not even a Tuesday meeting. I called Joe, and I said, Joe, got the name, Side Effects Incorporated. And he said, okay, have you and Eric even talked about this? I said, nope, that's it. I said, I'll call Eric after this. He goes, should I wait a day? No, don't wait a day. That's it. It's Side Effects. I called Eric. Eric, it's Side Effects. Okay. Should Joe wait a day? No, don't wait a day. This is it. That's it. We're in. So from that point forward is Side Effects. Well, so Eric, one day, comes into my office, I remember, and Joe wasn't there. And he comes in and he says, hey, he said, this is how much money we all made on the last table. Now, I still had my insurance agency. I had to. And Eric was still at his job a little bit, I think. And Joe was definitely doing his job. Because none of us were making enough money to say, okay, this is what we're doing. Well, Eric came up with this, and he goes, here's how much money we're each going to get. And here's how much money you would get if we only divided by 3. And I said, we only divide by 3? He said, yeah. He goes, I said, well, I thought it's a good idea to save. And he said, well, yeah, but I'm saying if Joe wasn't in the picture. Why wouldn't Joe be in the picture? Well, Joe really doesn't do anything. Well, this started to be a problem. And it just didn't work out very well. And then one day, Joe walked into my office, and he said, I want out. I want out. He says, I am not dealing with this Eric guy. I won't go through the other 5 minutes of the meeting, but he wants out. He's done. So we position, Eric and I get together and try to figure out, okay, how are we buying Joe out of his share? So Joe, exit Joe. Now it's Eric and I. And things are going along, things are moving, and it's moving. I mean, it really is moving. We're starting to put some of this together. Now, Eric is still this engineer person, loves the books, and I'm the marketing person and developing the relationships with the ADs and selling most of the ads. And now I've got people selling them in Columbus, I got people selling them in Indianapolis, and I got a person selling them in Dayton area. So things are starting to move a little bit. They're all part-time people. It's kind of moving. Hire an administrator or two. And then when Joe wants out, that was in 1999. In 1999, I made the decision that I'm going to sell the insurance agency and do this full-time because I think I've got something here. So I sell the insurance agency to a good friend, and I ask him to pay me over 3 years. Thank goodness, because that's what it took for Side Effects to really start ramping up. But still, I mean, in the early days, and you guys know how the whole thing works. It just takes time. You got to get the numbers, and you can't get a lot of numbers when there's basically 2 employees trying to put on the schools to get this thing going. But things are starting to move. We then move, probably in the year 2001 maybe, we moved to an office in Franklin, right on the other side of 75 up there. Things are moving along. And then, again, this could be a longer story, but the short version of it is, we end up getting involved in a tournament called Slam Dunk to the Beach in Dewey, Delaware. The state of Delaware. I didn't even know where the state of Delaware was. I knew it was over there. So we decide to take the tables out over Christmas, and it's a Christmas tournament, which that was bizarre. But anyway, we set these tables up. I take them from Springboro. I put this guy's advertisers on them, and I get to sit in a seat at the base court, and we're treated like royalty because I brought these tables out. And we did that for a few years, and the guy that ran that tournament out there was an interesting cat. And he decided he would love to have a tournament like this in Ohio. So we began talking about doing something like this in Ohio. To make a long story shorter, it comes down that the AD at Miami East goes to Vandalia Butler. Eric runs up to talk to him one morning to see about putting in score tables. So when he goes to put in score tables, Eric calls me as he's leaving there and said, I think we've got a site and a person who's excited about doing a tournament in Ohio that Bobby Jacobs in Delaware wants to do here. So we're going to do it. Great. So we start to put it together, and when things start to get put together, things begin to get like secretive. And I'm starting to have some distrust towards this Eric guy, who understand is a 50% partner of Side Effects. Remember how that worked? Yeah. He's at the gym. He's not going to Seattle, Washington. Let's give him a third. Joe leaves. Now he's 50%. The second dumbest thing I've done. I took Joe's 33% and we split it even. Anyway. So this tournament, we're starting to put some things together. Well, I suspect that Eric is trying to do the tournament as an Eric tournament, not as a Side Effects. And just a lot of things become very secretive and just interesting. So one day, I call into the office and say, or I actually call this Bobby Jacobs guy, and Bobby Jacobs acts as if we get disconnected from a cell phone conversation, because I'm getting into an area of this new tournament that I guess he and Eric have kind of worked out. So what happens is, when I get to the office, I ask the administrative assistant at that time, let me know if Bobby Jacobs calls in. And I want to know if he calls in, and no matter who he asks for. Well, she walks up to me and she says, he's just called. And I said, good. And I go to reach for the phone. She said, oh, he wants to talk to Eric. I said, oh, okay. So I get up, walk to the edge of the door, stand at the edge of the door, put my ear to the, just stand there, the door was open, and I hear a conversation that goes something like this. Really? Oh. Does he suspect anything? I don't think I should talk here. What'd you say? What'd he say? Oh boy. can we talk tonight? I don't think I should be talking here. So you think he definitely suspects something. So that's what I hear. And I had seen some acts that I was not real fond of. Oh, from 1998 sometime, 98, 99, to 2000 and to this act, which was in 2001, the end of 2001. But I never thought that his behavior would affect me. Because, by golly, I'm his business partner. I'm the one that gave him the business. He wouldn't do it to me. Well, a favorite quote of mine is, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. And I had seen that time and time again. I just chose not to believe it. Well, that was it. And I walked into his office one day, and I said, well, not one day, the next day. I pondered that night, went back in the next day, and I said, okay, you're gone. And he said, I'm gone. I said, yep, you're being terminated, effective immediately. He said, well, I'm 50% owner. I said, yep, and the other 50% is terminating you. He said, well, how does that work? And I said, I have no idea. I said, I can just tell you I will not work with you another day. Why? He thought I was overreacting, and I said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to figure out whether you're buying me or I'm buying you. And it's the old candy bar theory. I'm going to cut the candy bar right here, and then you get to pick which piece you want. And whichever piece you want, you take it. So either you're ending up with side effects or I am. Now, I go home that night knowing that side effects is me, and I know this is improper English, but it ain't him. Okay, I want to make sure I tell the camera that. But it ain't him. So I put together an offer he couldn't refuse. And I laid it down on the table, and he looked at it, and he said, do I have till tomorrow? I said, you have till 2 o'clock today. He goes, I don't even have till tomorrow. I said, nope, you have till 2 o'clock today. That's how I made it that sweet. He said, okay. He came back at 2 o'clock and said, I'll take, which was the one I knew he would take. And I had to buy out him out of my company. And it was, you would think that the writing those checks each month was painful. It was quite enjoyable. Because I knew that he was there and I'm here. In about the year 99, we did our first scoreboard. Miamisburg High School, if you'll remember, was the first score table after the Springboro table. The scoreboard, local scoreboard company, Industrial Electronics, who was a Daktronics dealer, called me one day and said, I want to put a new football scoreboard at Miamisburg High School, and they said they're not doing it unless you're involved. I don't know who you are and why they said it, but I'd like to have lunch with you. And I remember thinking for a moment, and it was only a moment, that I thought, why do they want me involved in that? Well, I figured it out. If we can give score tables, I guess their next thought was we can give scoreboards. So, met them over lunch and thought, okay, if we can do score tables, we can do scoreboards. And one thing led to another, and we just kept doing scoreboards. Then this scroll technology came out, so you didn't have to put just 3 on a side. You could put 16. First table went into Edgewood High School in Trenton. But we just kept doing little things and more of it. I mean, I could certainly go through some of the significant changes, but that's not what this is about. So that was it. We just kept doing one little thing and just kept doing it over and over and over again. And that's it.